All right, here's what we're going to do, James. Look, I mean, I think, and this is something that's important to me. You and I are friends. We go way back. And I want people to know you more like I know you. And so this happens to us. You're in the media. You do all this stuff. You do interviews. You do conferences like this. And so people meet the public James, right? And because that's what you got to do. So I want them to get to know actually you. And so I want to start with this, a little bit about where you grew up, and how you think that influenced how you got to what you're doing now.
Grew up in New Jersey. I would say
we got a big team in New Jersey.
State of New Jersey people over there.
Yeah.
Bergen County, which is the very northeastern tip of New Jersey on the New York state border. My parents are from upstate New York, though. So they're from Buffalo and Rochester, respectively. So there you go.
Good New York
I
team
saw a
with us,
Bills
too.
fan here today with the Bills hat, Buffalo Bills. And I grew up, I would say I grew up in a household that was not really politically active. I would say it was conservative, but not rigidly. My father and grandfather did property maintenance, and I would work with them. I'm the James III, James Sr., James Jr., a bunch of Irish people in a pickup truck working on homes. And
I'm married to a McGillan, so I'm partial to that. I like that.
Well, there you go. My mom's McCaffey, and my dad's O'Keefe, so it doesn't get much more.
That's good. I like that.
I spent most of my upbringing doing manual labor with my father and grandfather, and then I would say I read Animal Farm when I was in 9th grade. That was the first time I ever had that kind of instinct about justice.
Right.
And then when I went to college, Rutgers, State University of New Jersey,
Had your parents gone to college? Were you first to go to college?
My parents went to State University of New York.
Okay.
And my dad's an engineer, my mom's a physical therapist. And when I went to college, I was surrounded by political correctness, run amok, which this is in 2003, 2004. YouTube did not yet exist. Facebook was just getting started. And my professors were basically telling me how great the Soviet Union was. And I just remember feeling, and I was a philosophy major, but I remember feeling, well, this is odd. And I wasn't really political, but I remember thinking, this needs to be corrected. So I did a little research. I don't know what compelled me to do this. I just did it. And I found out the ratio of people who gave to the Democrats versus Republicans, and it was like 104 to 1 ratio. And I wrote a column about that, for the daily newspaper. And I started writing a column. So that was how things got started.
Okay. So siblings?
Sister, she's an architect.
Okay. Older, younger?
She's 3 years younger than me.
3 years younger, okay. Has your family, I mean, I know they have, I assume they have, how are they affected by what you do? Because I think a lot of people don't realize this. When you're in the public eye, and especially when you're doing controversial stuff, you get attacked in the media, you get thrown in jail. It has an effect on you on the front line, but there's some real serious stuff that happens to a family that's really hard.
I'm very fortunate to have very good parents. You always think that when you're growing up that your parents are weird, but then in my case I realized, well, these are really good people and very well balanced people. My dad is a very driven guy who never gives up, and my mom's a very sensible, balanced person who kind of taught me, for lack of a better way of putting it, about justice and the importance of fairness. But I think it was very tough in 2010 when I was arrested. That was a horrible, kind of a nightmare thing, because I was on pretrial release. Kind of feels like the sword of Damocles. You're facing a federal felony, which eventually I was exonerated for. And I spent 3-4 months living at home, and they felt it. When I was on federal.
Can I back up for a second? So, and I've lived through some of this too, so I want to parallel the experience. When you got arrested, that was news. And so did they find out about in the news first?
Yeah, it was a funny story.
Yeah.
I wrote a whole book about this called Breakthrough. It's quite a story. I was arrested on January 26, 2010. I had a SUV pull up to me as I was uploading my footage. I was in a senator's office asking questions. Didn't break the law. And they detained me, handcuffed me, put me in shackles on my legs, my hands. They put a leather belt around me, put me in a Timothy McVeigh orange jumpsuit, and then processed me and put me in a prison cell.
Right.
And then a parish prison, a jail cell. And then they give you that one phone call, right? Well, if you think about it, what phone numbers do you actually have memorized? You don't have your lawyer's
Almost
number
nothing,
memorized.
right?
You don't have your iPhone or your
Right.
wallet. They take that away from you, and they take your belt away from you. So the only phone number I had memorized was my landline to my parents' house. And I think it was like, I don't know, 11 o'clock at night. There's no chance. They picked up the phone. And I said, Mom, Dad, something has happened. And I'm in a federal prison holding cell.
Right.
And they're like, I've been arrested by the FBI. And my dad's first words were, oh, dear God, James. And he's like, and I said, listen, I actually think I said the words, I didn't do it. I didn't do whatever they're going to say I did.
Right.
Because it's a sensory deprivation chamber. You have no idea what's going on outside the world, you know.
Yeah, I've been there.
As you have. And it was really terrifying. They put me in a cage, and they had this public defender present me with this crime that I did not commit, and it was a 10-year prison sentence for, he said, you are being charged with a felony that carries 10 years in prison. I'm sitting, I can't move, I'm chained to a chair. It's like, it feels like you're living in a dystopian, and at that moment in my life, at 25 years old, I thought my life was over. I said, there's no way, I never thought I'd be sitting here, like with all of you. I thought my life was completely over, like that was it. There's no way to escape to Houdini this.
Right.
I'm literally shackled in a chair. So I called my dad, and but my parents always sort of understood, and they always were there for me as I went through that.
How is it today for them? You get attacked in the media incessantly. How do they deal with that? Have they gotten used to that now?
I think a lot of us have gotten used to that now. Yeah. I think the world has changed from 5, 6, 7 years ago when to be spoken ill of on Wikipedia was a novel concept, and now it's sort of like we all read between the lines in a way that we just didn't 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. And our country is more divided than it was. So I think that most people understand when they slander you and defame you that it's become kind of a badge of honor in some more than it used to.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I want to go to something more positive, and that's some pretty difficult, dark stuff you talked about, and you talked about those periods of your life. I know that you and I were talking recently, and I was going to come out to the office, and you said, I'll show you around the office, and I said, I'm not really interested in that.
I just want to go sailing.
Right. And so I think this is something people probably don't know about you. You live a very intense life. There's a lot of pressure. You're doing a lot of press. You're being attacked. You're constantly being litigated against, threatened, home raided. There's something that you do when you want to shut off your mind and just chill. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sailing,
Yeah.
which you and I have to go.
Yes.
I canceled on the sailing because I was working, but
which is normal for you, by the way.
But the good time to go sailing is whenever you feel it. Yeah. So I have a sailboat, and sailing for me is it's very therapeutic because when I'm sailing, I can't think about anything but sailing. It's some people like ride a motorcycle. They say it's your zen.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a very athletic, mental. It's physics. It's sort of aerodynamics. It's relaxing. There's no engine, so you're kind of one with the world. And this past summer, I sailed my boat all the way up to Maine from New York. It was quite
By
something.
yourself?
I have friends come for different, and one of the joys of sailing is, which I hope to do with you, is show people sailing who've never been sailing.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never really done it, and so to me, it's just fascinating that you do that because your mode of existence is high pressure, high speed.
Yeah.
And sailing is chill, like it's very low. Like, I know there's a lot of stuff going on, but it's a relaxing endeavor.
It's not as relaxing as you might think.
Okay. I've never done it, so this is good.
It's
Do we have any sailors out there, by the way?
It's
we got a few out there.
It's very hard to explain. It's like you're going 8 miles an hour, but it's like jumping out of an airplane. The boat's heeling, it's listing, so it's over at 20 degrees, and it's slightly terrifying. If the line that separates disaster from success is very thin.
Sounds like undercover reporting.
Sort of like undercover journalism. Yeah. So, but it's fun, and it requires a lot of self-reliance, and you're in your own world. There's no traffic lanes. There's no people. You're just sort of out there. So that But I think part of my challenge is that as you are, you're an entrepreneur, you're a leader,
Right.
and running an organization is probably the most stressful thing, because I think that the outside forces will never defeat us.
Right.
It's actually the division inside that can
Yeah.
defeat an organization or any cause.
Right.
And as long as you have a strong organization with people who believe in the same values and are all going in the right direction, you can't really lose as long as you don't stop.
So, we're getting to the end here of the evening. One last question for you, and feel free to wander on this. So Project Veritas is how old now?
2010.
Okay, so we're 12 years in. What do the next 12 years look like if you project out?
Well, I think Project Veritas will be a more significant and more important news organization than the New York Times in a few years. And we're already one of the only investigative journalism organizations in the United States, because journalism is printing that which they do not want printed. We print things people don't want printed. So that's really important. And it just needs to sustain and scale. We're putting out stories almost every day. The FBI raid did, to be honest, chill out a lot of our sources, rightfully so. But I think ultimately it'll help us. In fact, we had 2 journalists apply, undercover journalists apply. One of them was had worked in the Navy, and she goes, James, that was my final job interview question. I'm talking to her. She goes, James, I wasn't so sure about you, whether you guys are the real deal. But then you got raided by the feds. And I said, if the feds are raiding you, you must be legitimate. That one quick story about a donor, because you're a nonprofit, I'm a nonprofit. The same thing happened with a donor. It's like the one, I don't know, in 2014, like our tax return got leaked because you can redact the names on 990, but by accident in one of the states we didn't put the black marker over the names, and I had New York Times reporters calling our donors. I mean, you had all these journalists. They're not busy exposing corruption. They're busy calling the donors. How could you support this man, right? Trying to shame them. This is in 2014. And I'm scared. I'm like, oh boy, are these donors going to get cold feet, right? They're getting called by the New York Times. And this guy, I'm just going to call him Bob, he calls me up and he goes, James, I got a national security reporter from the New York Times asking me why I wrote you a check for, $25,000. And I said, well, Bob, what are you going to do? He's like, well, obviously you're doing good work for them to be targeting you, so I'm going to write you a check for $250,000. So that's the answer to your question. It's going to grow.
Okay.
It's going to hopefully grow.
So let's close with this. We've got about a minute left. All these people, they're fans of yours. I'm a big fan of yours, obviously. What can we do to make sure that it continues to grow and to support the work that you're doing?
I mean, I think what you said to me and to them is very profound. You have to be there for each other. That's probably, in a macro sense, the most important thing. Is that, if anything happens, I'll be there for you and you'll be there for me, whatever we need as we fight our respective fights in this room. And then I'm a fan of what Dennis Prager usually says, which is there's 3 things that you can do really practically other than what you just said. Number 1, you can do this. You can fight. You can be the tip of the spear. You can be a crusader. In my case, it's for the First Amendment and for reporting, and what you're doing is very important. Number 2, you can donate to those people. And everyone can donate something, right? Or number 3, you can do nothing. But number 4 doesn't count. Whining and complaining and bitching. That doesn't count.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. James O'Keefe. God bless you, brother. Thank you.